is really about learning to call from within us that deep compassion, courage, and wisdom that is innate within all human beings, that we all are imbued with it in infinite quantities, but it has to be called forth, it has to be watered, it has to be nourished. If we don't have compassion watered within us, it kind of disappears or dies or kind of retreats to the point where people feel deeply unhappy.
Yeah! What's up, everybody? Your life alchemist, your dragon. Welcome to Alchemize Life. I'm your host, Justin David Carl. This is a show where I seek out and share expertise, wisdom, and thought leadership in all domains with the mission of empowering and inspiring you to proactively design and truly live a life worth living. We're all in this together, and when we do the work together, we go so much farther, so much faster, and have so much more fun. Without further ado, let's dig into this episode and alchemize life. Robbie Lockie, so good to have you on the show, brother.
Pleasure to be here.
Let's kick off with a little story about you canoeing and up a river or some sort of misadventure that you had.
So I grew up in Zimbabwe in Africa, and when I was about 13 or 14, I can't remember my exact age, but sort of mid-teens, I went on an excursion with some friends up the Zambezi River. And this is a very long, meandering river that goes along the sort of northwest border of Zimbabwe, where I grew up, into Zambia. So along the Zambezi River, there's lots of kind of wildlife and just thick forest and jungle, and also savanna on the other side. And it's a beautiful experience. It's kind of one of those kind of rites of passage that a lot of young people do, or used to do at least anyway, in Zimbabwe. But one evening we kind of set up camp on the side of the Zambezi River, and I remember vividly kind of eating our beans and bread and things on our little campfires, and getting ourselves into our little tents and tucking ourselves up and falling asleep. But several hours later, I awoke to the sound of my best friend, who I was sharing the tent with, screaming her head off at me, "Get up, get up, get up, the water, the water, the water." And I opened my eyes, at first very irritated by being awoken from what was a very deep and kind of restful slumber, to realize that I was completely surrounded by water. And of course, the Zambezi River is, it's in a country where the weather is very hot, and the water itself was very, very warm. It was kind of body temperature, and it was kind of up to, and those who can't see me, I'm putting my hands next to my face on my cheeks, and the water had risen right up to that level, but I hadn't felt it because of the temperature of the water. And she sort of shook me, and I kind of jumped out of the bed, out of my mattress, my sleeping bag, tore myself out of it, opened the front of the tent and tried to get out, and was met with a whole bunch of elephants. I don't know what the noise elephants make, but screeching and shouting at humans as they were running around the tents of the young people who were on this trip. I was absolutely terrified, and I really thought that I was going to meet my end at that moment. But that's one of my most funniest, craziest experiences in my life that I can remember. And I really, as a child, got up real close with nature. And looking back, living in the UK where there is no nature, there are no wild animals. It's a pretty deserted place when it comes to that sense. I do look back with fondness and feel very honored and privileged and grateful to have been able to experience, nature in its truest, rawest form.
Yeah, that's both a fascinating and exciting story, but also really just cool to understand that you grew up in like Zimbabwe. Like that is so radically different than, I would say, probably many people living in the UK and major metropolitan cities across the world. I myself grew up in a lot of nature in Washington State, in a really small town, and that plays a big part kind of like in my own life. And especially now as I'm getting older, I'm realizing like I want to get back more into nature as soon as possible. So I've slowly been transitioning to getting closer to nature. So just recently moved to Santa Cruz to get close to the beach and closer to more hiking. So at some point, we may need to get you moved to a place that has more nature. But I know you're definitely making big waves where you're currently at.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do dream of leaving the city at some point soon. I've lived in the UK for maybe 24, 25 years now. I think it is 25 years, perhaps. I really have lost track, but it's a, an amazing place, a very dynamic place. But, when you spend any time in nature in the UK, whether it's like forests or kind of lake areas, there's no animals really. There's not a single stitch of kind of wildlife left in this country. It's unfortunate, and we'll dive into it. But what's left really in most countries like the UK are human beings and farmed animals, and all that's left of the natural wild animals is less than sort of 3% of the
Yeah.
biomass. Globally, I think it's less than 4% of the biomass is actually wild animals, and the rest is humans, cows, chickens, and pigs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, before we dive too deep, let me introduce you to the audience. So, you're the co founder and co director of Plant Based News, which is the biggest vegan news and media platform in the world. You're also founder of World Plant Milk Day, which we will talk about. And you identify as they, them, non binary. And we'll probably dive into that as well. But to kind of, start where you kind of started with your adventures as a child, I'm curious about your origin stories in business and entrepreneurship, and how you actually came to be the co-founder and co-director of Plant-Based News. So if you could take us back to that entrepreneurial journey, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. So entrepreneurship has been in my blood since I was a child. My father has always run and always ran his own businesses. So I grew up on the artist's floor, the floor of my mum's artist studio, and also running around the various kind of storerooms of my dad's workshop, where he sort of mended and repaired vehicles. He had a breakdown service and a car and truck spare service. So I was surrounded by people who really carved their own path when it came to business. So I was always inspired by that. And before I actually first came to the UK in my sort of late teens, early 20s, a lot of people said to me, don't bother going to the UK. It's such a competitive place. You're never going to make it. You'll never succeed at anything that you're doing because there's too many people doing what you're doing or doing what you want to do. But that didn't put me off. I arrived in the UK with 200 pounds in my pocket, a bag of family photos and a few clothes and not much else. A little bit of a scared country mouse. And I stayed with my cousin for about a year and a half, and then ended up moving to London, where I then made my way up in the world of agencies and media and advertising and digital media. And my focus really was to be a digital communicator. I always wanted to work in digital, even from my very young age, when I first started working in an internet service provider and a web agency in 1998. I had a feeling that the internet was going to be this incredible tool for knowledge, education, and communication. There's actually a cutting from when I was like 19 years old, and that's a long time ago, where I'm talking about how the internet will connect people like we've never ever dreamt of. And I think I sort of foresaw the sort of likes of social media, because at the time I was using these technologies like IRC, which is short for Internet Relay Chat, ICQ, all these sort of what feel like ancient technologies now. But for me, it was a really exciting revolution, really, that made me realize that the internet was this incredible, remarkable tool that could connect you to anyone, anywhere, instantly, on any subject. So I absolutely loved that. And that is when I sort of fell in love with this technology, and it is a tool. And my sort of focus really over the years was digital and user experience design, digital design. And that is kind of where I found myself. But as time rolled on and I got sucked into, as most people do, that corporate world where there's meetings and there's buzzwords like, we'll circle back. And there's a lot of like this sort of corporate lingo that people talk about, and just KPIs and all this stuff. It just became more and more soulless to me. And I kind of felt like I had no purpose. And I was working in an agency in London where the kind of main client, a multi-million pound client, was a Coca-Cola. And one of the Coca-Cola execs came into the meeting and they were talking about the sales of Fanta, Dr. Pepper, and Sprite. And the guy who was facilitating the meeting slammed his fist on the table and said, "We got to," and he was American. I'm going to try and do my best American accent. He's like, "We got to sell more soda to kids." I don't know why I go all Southern whenever I do an American accent, but he was so like angry that we weren't making sales. But I sat there and realized, well, I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing this work? Why am I working in this environment? I don't feel anything for these brands. I don't feel a sense of purpose at all. And I felt a bit sort of lost. And for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was kind of really stuck. I actually ended up being fired from that job. And it's one of the only jobs I've ever been fired from. And that set me on a path of sort of like a bit of a low, but it made me realize that I need to take things into my own hands. If I want to change my life, as if I want to start working in the types of companies that mean something, that are involved in social change or something positive, then I need to just go for it. So I applied for a job at Jamie Oliver. And for those who know, Jamie Oliver is a somewhat influential chef on the global scene with regards food and food politics. And I got the job and I absolutely loved it. And I worked for them for a few years. And Jamie was a huge inspiration to me, not just with, social change and the politics of food, but also using my skills and using our skills in marketing and communication to do positive things. And I was there for a few years and had some amazing experiences and wonderful adventures, but ended up then leaving and starting my own sort of mini agency where I worked for charities and nonprofits and NGOs. And that's when I started really, I suppose, my entrepreneurial journey of running my own business and having my own clients and building and working with all kinds of very, very exciting organizations, including the European Parliament as well, where I got to work on a huge, big outdoor marketing campaign for the European Parliament and the youth program that they were running at the time. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey. And how I ended up, moving on, obviously, into plant-based news was an interesting story. So I obviously became vegan 8 years ago, and I really sort of wanted to be able to do something with this new knowledge, with this newfound kind of realization. And Klaus Mitchell, who I co-run PBN with, we met each other at a vegan event, and he came up to me, this sort of brash young man, and sort of demanded some SD cards from me. And I thought to myself, who the hell are you? He was like, "I'm Klaus from YouTube." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't know who you are, but anyway, I'm not going to give you my SD cards." And then I realized that actually he was a friend of my friend who put on the event, and he wanted to make some content to get it up on his channel. And that's how we became friends. He actually then helped me move into my home, which was just by pure chance at the bottom of the hill where he lived. That very day, he helped me move into my new home, and we've been friends for 7 years. We obviously set up and ran this business together. There's a backstory on how PBN began as well, which is a little longer, but that's how it began. And obviously that's a bit of a whistle stop tour on my origin story of business. But ever since I was a child, that was bred into me, was go your own way, make your own path. Don't just accept what's given to you. And I really live by that. And it's not an easy path. And I know a lot of people want to start their own businesses and start their own apps or platforms or organizations. But for me, it was just about taking that leap of faith and just going for it.
Yeah. So several questions in there. This is really great. I appreciate you sharing it. What age were you when you got fired from that job that kind of like then put you on the trajectory?
I would say it was probably like mid-20s, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah, really, really mid-20s. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, but what I did believe, and I really believed in what I was doing. And the reason I got fired was because the agency was creating the separation between those that were creative and the digital teams. The digital team were being people who created the digital products, the user experience, the web designers, the digital designers, and the creatives were people who were on the other side of the building, who were the ones that came up with the ideas. And there was not a lot of like cohesion. There was not a lot of working together. A lot of the digital products were done as an afterthought. And every time there was a new project, I would get my computer, put it on a table with wheels and wheel myself to the other side of the building And of course, the director did not like that. He was like, "You need to stay in your lane." And I was essentially fired because he said, "You're a very talented designer. You're very good at what you do. But honestly, we just need a yes man. We need someone to come in and just do what they're told and not challenge anything." So
Yeah,
I wasn't a right fit for that.
just fall in line.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's always interesting to me how oftentimes like some of the things that seem like terrible, really unfortunate end up being like, the thing that gets us to where we're really meant to go and really empower us to shine. So I love that you turned that, being fired. After that is when you went to go work with Jamie Oliver, right?
Yes.
And, I assume that was in your mid-20s as well.
Yeah, that's right. So sort of towards the end of my 20s, that kind of that was the right time zone because I think I met my partner Lewis when I was 27. So yeah, it would have been sort of maybe 25. I was at that agency, and then 27 went to work for Jamie. And then after that, went off to do a bunch of other things and become a freelancer and start my own agency called Lavarita. Lavarita meaning the truth.
Mm,
And my logo was a big lighthouse that was spinning like this and was all about like illuminating the truth, shining a light on I think it was all about like creating ethical advertising. That was my kind of vision. So if we can
I
find
love
the
that. One of my, like, more recent favorite quotes, and I don't know who it's attributed to, is, "Be the lighthouse, not the tugboat."
mm,
And I feel like plant-based news does a really good job of that, of just, really showcasing all the, incredible things that are happening in the plant-based world, as well as, and we'll talk about this at some point, your positive news endeavor, which for someone like me is incredibly uh, awesome because I actually read little to no news because I don't like negative things coming into my world.
yeah.
So I choose to focus on the positive. Let's talk a little bit about you, going plant based or becoming vegan, and then I would like to go a little bit more into kind of like how plant based news actually came about because I think it's a really cool story, and it's just fascinating how like all these things led to you literally having the biggest vegan news and media platform in the world. So 8 years ago, you decided to go plant-based, vegan. What kind of was the impetus for that?
So at the time, I was experiencing a lot of health problems, joint issues, skin issues, tiredness, and felt very unwell. I really didn't know what was wrong with me, and I actually ended up seeing lots of doctors and experiencing, the usual. You need to have this test, you need to have that test, and take this cream and that pill. Nothing really made much of a difference. And a friend of mine recommended that I look at maybe trying an alkaline diet, which really, for the most part, is just increasing the amount of green vegetables,
Mm,
cruciferous vegetables that you have in your diet. And anyone who works in plant-based nutrition who knows that when you consume these vegetables, they increase your arterial function, they improve blood flow around your body. So, really it's about like it felt a bit like jump starting the machine. All this knowledge came later, but I did I think it was a 5 day, I can't remember now, 5 day or 7 day juice fast. I think it was a 5 day juice fast. And that was with Jason Vale. He's called the Juice Master. He's a UK based juice kind of expert, he might call him. And his kind of focus is really about how you can hypernourish your body using fruits and vegetables through juicing. People have various opinions on whether juicing is effective or not. However, after 5 days of 5 different juices each day, and having to get up at the crack of dawn to make each of these juices, put them in a bottle, and take them to work, it was a very enlightening experience. I was expecting to be tired and exhausted and grumpy, but I made these 5 juices, had them each one throughout the day, and I just have such a fond memory of like going to the supermarket and there being like 10 pineapples or more on the conveyor belt as we went over, and the lady going, "Are you having a party?" And I was like, "No, this is my food for the week." And she just looked at me and she was like, "You're crazy." But I felt incredible. I felt like Superman. I was just bursting with energy. And I felt a real difference. But shortly after that, I think it was a few days later, we ended up going to a friend's birthday party. And sorry, I completely lost the train of my thought. The question was like, well, how did I end up vegan? No.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you started with this juice fast, but then how did you actually like, you know what
Right.
I mean? That's
How
five to
did I
seven
end up?
days. Like, how'd you
Yeah.
end up full vegan?
How did I end up full vegan? Yeah. Okay. So going back. So I did this juice fast and I felt amazing. But then a few days later, I ended up going to a pub with my partner for a friend's birthday party. A pub is, this place where you drink and hang out with friends, British sort of like community spot. And we had a beef burger, and it was this giant kind of layered, stacked beef burger, the greasiest thing you've ever seen. And I ate it, and I felt so disgusting and so ill afterwards.
Mm.
And for me, that was the beginning of my kind of move away from eating animal products. I started to realize just how much what we ate affected our bodies and my body and how I felt personally. Um, Around that time, Netflix had launched in the UK online, at least not through CDs and or DVDs even. And I started to explore all these amazing documentaries: Forks Over Knives, Food Inc., Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead by Joe Cross, and I was just blown away. My eyes were so opened to the reality of the industrialized food system, but also the effect that food has on the body, and also the effect that food has in increasing and causing, in most cases, these lifestyle diseases like obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. And I started to become more interested in it. And I've always loved nutrition. I've always been interested in natural health. My mum has always been an advocate for, natural health. And we always sort of joked about living in a house filled with lotions and potions. My mum always wanted to be a professional apothecary. And we would always have some kind of tincture lying around the house. And I love that. I always love the idea of being some kind of like, sage, making these different potions. But the turning point for me came when I stumbled across this documentary, recommended by a friend. I'll start that again. It came across this documentary, which a friend recommended, called Earthlings, which, if anyone who's seen it, it completely shifted my entire awareness away from the lifestyle I was living before to where I am now. It caused me to really take a long, cold, hard look at our species and really question, the choices of most of our kind, why we treat animals the way we do, and the script that is produced and the script that's written. I'll say that again. The script that is performed by Joaquin Phoenix in that film is so beautifully put and so well articulated. It just had this magical way of just unlocking this realization within me. And from that moment, I knew that I had to do something about what I had learned. And sort of around, I think that was that very day, in fact, I was at home and I heard screaming outside the front of our house, and ran out to the front of our house. We live on a cul-de-sac, sort of, dead end road where it goes to the end and there's just houses around. And this lady had been speeding up the cul-de-sac and she'd hit one of the neighbor's cats. This beautiful white Persian cat, I think big blue eyes, if I remember correctly. And, they used to be in our garden all the time. I used to hang out there. I knew this animal personally, and they were lying on the floor on the tarmac on the road in this huge, big, I remember the big pool of ruby red blood. And I looked over and I saw the mum and the kids and the people carrying the little van thing that she had. Ran over to her and I said, what's happened? What's going on? And she was like, the cat. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see. Ran over to the cat and sort of looked down and had a bit of a spiritual moment, really, because people say, when an animal is suffering and it is in being tormented through pain, we should put that animal out of their suffering. And I couldn't do it. I absolutely could not take that cat and strangle their neck, strangle the cat. And, I looked at the animal and I saw the blood, and the blood was the same color as my blood. And, their eyes were like my eyes. And I just had that real connection, this sort of moment with this animal. And as the life slipped through my fingers, you could say, and then they were gone. Yeah, it was a really, really powerful moment for me because, some people out there's a lot of really tough people that'll be like, oh, it's just a cat, don't be such and we'll talk about gender and the way people are expected to behave as men or women. But I felt this deep pain and this sorrow for this animal, and I thought about, what I learned in Earthlings, and I thought about how we continuously pay other people to kill animals for us every single day. Whenever I go to the supermarket, when I was buying pork or chicken or fish, I was paying other human beings to kill animals for me, for my taste and my pleasure. And that realization really hit me like a like a truck in the night. And I thought to myself, people need to know this. People really need to know that, number one, we don't need to consume animals. And number two, that animal suffering, that the terrible animal suffering that occurs on our planet really is preventable. And we all hold the power, every time we choose to eat what we eat, to either cause more suffering or to end it. And really, that was the moment I think I truly became vegan. I battled obviously with food a little bit in the year to come, but that was when I made that resolution to myself that this was something really important, and that I needed to be involved and be a part of it. So that was the beginning for me.
I'm curious about kind of that year of challenge. You said you battled with food a bit for a year, and can you dive a little bit more into like, what that was like? Obviously, you kind of had this emotional, spiritual, even mental awakening kind of around, your own participation in something that you didn't want to support any longer. But I'm curious how that transitional year went for you. Like, what were some of the struggles, and maybe what were some of the things that you wish you had known sooner, or would have given advice to your younger self?
I struggled a lot with cheese, as most people do. Dairy is
Mm.
incredibly addictive, and oops, dairy is incredibly addictive, and I find that people tend to struggle with that addiction, and unless you wean yourself off dairy, it can be quite difficult to stop consuming it, even if it sort of sneaks in here and there. And I would find myself having the odd, um, cheese sandwich, or a friend cooking me dinner and there accidentally being cheese in it, and going, it's fine, don't worry about it. Or
Hmm.
going to my grandma, who's now 102 years old, her making me food, and there be cheese or some prawns, or you guys call them shrimp, in them. So in the beginning, when I wasn't really technically an activist or a campaigner, I was very relaxed about it. And I think it's only when I started to immerse myself in vegan media that I started to take it very seriously. And, I'm not like someone who's standing here saying that, I'm an absolute perfectionist with absolutely everything, and that, I haven't sort of had slip ups over the years with various things that have snuck in through accidentally consuming something, not realizing there's whey or casein or something like that, or shellac, which is, the crushed beetles they use to make fruit and vegetables shiny. That stuff happens. But since I started to be involved in media and create media, I realized I had a responsibility to embody this lifestyle and not kind of treat it like a hotel, to come and go from it. I take it very seriously what we do. It's really important. It really matters. And for me, veganism is a moral baseline. It's a life philosophy. It's a
Hmm.
protected belief in this country, in the UK. If you cannot be fired from your job for being vegan, and I take it seriously now, and I think it's something that we want to communicate to people. But I also want to remind people that unless you're a campaigner or a vegan activist, we shouldn't be putting, that much pressure on ourselves. I think when you're a campaigner or being activist, you have a sense of obligation to your community to lead by example, I think. But that doesn't mean, I'm not sitting here saying we should all be perfect, and if you're not perfect, you shouldn't do it. For me, it was just a journey. It's an inner journey more than about like what foods to eat and not eat. It's that internal decision to say, do you know what? I'm going to take this seriously. I'm not going to sneak in that that cheese sandwich because, oh, nobody's going to know. Well, I'm going to know, and
Hmm.
what do I think of myself if I continuously sneak in these cheese sandwiches, as someone who really believes in what I'm doing. And the more I sort of saw what happened to mother cows and the horrific experiences these animals endure on dairy farms, I got closer and closer to the idea that I didn't want to ever touch it. So
Yeah.
that's where I ended up.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Veg Nutrition. Live better. So I'm actually a veg elite athlete, and before I joined the team, I spent months doing my due diligence to make sure that the company was vision, mission, and value aligned with me, my values, my mission, my vision, and my lifestyle. I got to know the owners super well. I even got to know the person who formulates all the products, and they passed with flying colors. So I couldn't be more excited to represent a company that I feel so aligned with. And I want to tell you about two of my favorite products. The first is the veg pre workout. So when I first went vegan, or mostly vegan, the last thing for me to go fully vegan was finding a vegan pre workout that gave me the focus, the energy, and the power that I was looking for. And I can tell you, this is the best pre workout that I've ever had. It gives me incredible focus and energy. And what's probably the best is it leaves me with no crash after I take it, which is great. And the flavors are so freaking good. There's literally peach mango and a Patriot Pop that tastes like, the firecracker popsicles, cherry lemon lime flavor. They're literally so good that I can dry scoop them. And they just released a watermelon flavor for just in time for summer, and it's incredible. So that's the first product. The second product is arguably also my favorite, and that's the plant protein. Comes in 3 incredible flavors: chocolate peanut butter, vanilla ice cream, and cold brew coffee. Yep, you heard me. Cold brew coffee flavor. It tastes incredible, all 3 flavors, 25 grams of protein, fully organic, incredible ingredients, heavy metal tested, and it is my go-to post-workout. Make sure that I'm recovering and refueling and giving my muscles the protein that they need to rebuild for that next workout. So go to vegnutrition.com/dragon and try their full line of supplements, and you'll get 15% off. Or you can just use Dragon at checkout and you'll get 15% off. So that's vegnutrition.com/dragon to get 15% off. Veg Nutrition, live better. When I first transitioned to the vegan lifestyle, cheese was a big challenge for me too, because prior to going vegan, I basically ate cheese every single day. I'd have cottage cheese. I would have those little like Happy Cow, or not Happy Cow, sorry, Laughing Cow
Yeah.
cheese wedges, and like, all sorts of, like, I just love cheese. Like, one of my favorite kind of things to do was like cheese and crackers. Like, that was just like, like incredible, like delicious to me. And what kind of stopped me is one of my friends who had kind of became like my unofficial like vegan plant-based coach. He started to tell me over text message like how cheese was made. And when I like just thinking about visually, like I didn't watch any media on it. I didn't see anything, but just like as he texted it out to me in a text message, I was like, that is disgusting. Like, I do not want to be consuming that. And then later, I think it was actually through plant-based news, like I learned that there is chemicals or things within cheese, like dairy cheese, that literally make it physically addicting like a drug. And I was like, well, no wonder it's so hard for me to like let that go, is because like, it's just like any other, super addictive drug. And I think a lot of people don't realize actually how addictive cheese is. And of course, a lot of people, when they contemplate going, plant-based or vegan, they're like, well, I'm going to have to let go of pizza, or let go of, all the, wine and cheese and all those things like that. But fortunately, I feel like now there are so many incredible like vegan cheese options, particularly, and I'm just gonna shout them out because it really kind of transformed my love and appreciation for vegan cheese is Shrimu. You know, Rich Roll's wife. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to have the Shrimu
I
cheese.
haven't, but I know of it. I've heard it's legendary and iconic.
Okay, it is like mind blowing. So, it's not cheap. So, like for me, I had it actually for my wedding back in July of 2021, and w- everyone at my wedding was like, there's no way this is like vegan. Like it is like incredible. And I probably ate, most of the cheese at my wedding because it was just like it was so incredibly
Mm.
delicious. And like guests were like, oh my God, this is better than regular cheese. And so,
Mm.
I just want to shout out Julie Pyatt, Ritual's wife, for starting that because when I had that, I was like, okay, like vegans now have a cheese that is just as good as like
Mm.
the other stuff. Because I think, when I first kind of went vegan, there are a lot of cheeses that are like they're okay, but they're not like,
Well, that's
what I
it.
used to
I
have.
I think it's important to differentiate and create a distinction between the different types of vegan cheeses because
Mm,
you have the first type, which you buy in the supermarket, which is super cheap, and it's not cheese. It's literally solidified coconut oil with a
mm,
bit of flavoring, and that's the dire sort of cheeses where it's cheese flavored coconut oil. Really, that's the
mm,
best way to describe it. And it's the reason why people don't particularly enjoy it because there's not as much flavor as what they're used to with traditional dairy cheese. Then there is fermented plant cheeses, which is what Julie creates, and that's where they take high fat plant milks like cashew milk, and they
mm,
add a bacteria which actually ferments the milk and gives you a very similar process to dairy cheese. So you get that tangy umami kind of creamy, just it's just amazing. Saltiness, and that's what the bacterium, if it's and a fungus. There's all kinds of things that grow on cheese, which sounds totally gross, but it gives it that amazing flavor. But the reason a lot of these things are so expensive is because they're handmade. They're made in very small batches. That takes a long time to make. It's very slow. But artisanal vegan cheese is the only way to enjoy vegan cheese, in my humble opinion, which I'm sure you agree with. So if you are interested and you do love cheese and you do want to make a switch away from dairy, do look out for, those handmade fermented vegan cheeses because that will blow your mind.
yeah. Yeah, and the other thing that happened with me, and I think it happens with other people who transition, it's like the longer you go without having like actual dairy cheese, the
Yeah.
more you kind of like forget like just like what it was like. And then you can have some of the like store bought vegan cheeses, and you're like, oh, this is like actually pretty good. And I think it's just like any new kind of like developing market, like the initial products kind of like suck, but then as like the market matures, they get better and better. And, I've noticed, we have a store called Trader Joe's in the US, and they're offering like more and more kind of like vegan dairy options. It's like dairy vegan alternatives, like everything, from cheeses to, pesto and, all these other things. And they're like incredible. And it's just like, this is Trader Joe's is like everywhere all over the US, and it's just becoming more and more accessible. So, I do want to like make sure that we don't forget to cover kind of like how actually like plant-based news came about, because I think it's, a bit serendipitous, as well as just like it's so interesting when you start to get on the right path, how like infinite intelligence, source, universe, God, whatever you believe in, starts to kind of like line things up for you. So if you could, share that story of, how it actually came about, that would be
Sure. Yeah,
fascinating.
absolutely. It was a very strange experience. And I still look back and think, did that happen? Is this real life? So Klaus and I Klaus Mitchell and I met each other at Vegan Futures some 7 years ago, and we became really good friends. And we ended up working together in my spare room in our previous home that Klaus actually helped us move into. And we were creating content and doing fun things with lives and just having a real ball, really, like creating vegan media and communicating this to the audience that was kind of there on the social channels. Klaus started Plant-Based News as a YouTube channel, and I joined forces with him about, I would say a year or so after that. And he and I just kind of got on. We had loads in common as far as like our skill set and the different things that we could do. And we started working together, and it was just a lot of fun, and I was really loving it. And out of the blue, we ended up getting an email from a guy called Prince Khalid Al Walid, and he is a Saudi Arabian prince of the Asad family, and of course, that comes with its controversy, I know. But he is a very conscientious, very kind vegan advocate, a feminist. He's someone who's really championing a lot of positive causes in Saudi Arabia. And anyway, we didn't know any of this, didn't know who he was, never heard of him. And, when you get these emails from princes, you sometimes expect them to be spam or kings. Yeah. I'm some king from Uganda or Nigeria, and, I've got 900 million Ghanaian dollars, and I just need you to give me your mother's postcode, your date of birth, your PIN number, and, and I'll transfer the money. There's a lot of that sort of stuff on the internet. Yeah. And we were really all quite close to ignoring the email. But I decided to look him up, and I did, and I'm really glad I did, because we realized that he was an entrepreneur, he was a philanthropist, and someone who was really focused on social change and making the world a better place. And I couldn't believe it. We were amazed that someone of his stature, standing, had noticed what we were doing and was interested in the work that we were doing. So we replied almost straight away, and we said, "So happy to hear from you. Really inspired and amazed that you've noticed us and seen our work, and we're really grateful. And it's very kind of you to reach out to us." And he responded back straight away, and we weren't expecting that. And his email back was, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you replied. I didn't expect you to reply. And I'm even more impressed that you didn't just ask me for money." So, we weren't even thinking about money. We weren't even thinking about investment or ownership or anything like that. We were just honored that he had seen and appreciated the work that we were doing. And he said to us, "Pitch me what you want. Pitch me what you want to do. What do you want to do with this platform? What do you want to do with this organization?" Klaus and I stayed up that night till 6 a.m. We didn't sleep. We got a Google slide out, and we created this whole grand vision of what we wanted to create, from bottom of the road, which was like we'd keep doing our jobs and maybe we'd get a bit of money to sort of build a few things. Middle of the road, where we quit our jobs, but we'd have like a couple of people working for us, and a top of the shelf, which was quit our jobs and have a big team and have a studio and have all these amazing things. We built up this whole organograph of our whole company and our organization, and all these projections about where we were going to go and how far we would need to be if we had investment. And we pitched it to him 12 o'clock the next day. Both of us had like dark rings under our eyes, super exhausted, but we pitched him the idea, and he just said, "Love it, let's do it." So he ended up investing in PBN, taking a share in our organization, which wasn't an organization at the time. We didn't even have a bank account. Mm-hmm. And he really believed in what we were doing. He believed that what we were doing really mattered. And he has supported, has been a close friend and support to us ever since. And 7 years later, 3 million followers on social media and 85 million impressions a month on our platform, and billions and millions of impressions, obviously over the, a few billion impressions over the 7 years that we've been doing this, and a team, including support. So this is not permanent, a full team, including support staff. There's a part-time people of about 23 people. And so I'm very proud and privileged and honored to have been able to build this with Klaus and create something that really, really matters. And, when I go to events around the world and people come up to me and say, "Your podcast has changed my life. It's, it got me through university," or someone will say, "I read an article about this and it's completely changed my opinion and view," or, I shared a piece of information that you guys posted with my family, and now my whole family are vegan." It's that kind of thing that really gets me out of bed in the morning and compels me continuously to keep doing what we're doing. 7 years, nonstop, daily news, every day, all day, 365 days of the year. And that's our story in a nutshell.
Yeah, again, it's so magical when you start to kind of really follow your heart's desire and get aligned with your values and have an intention to live with more intention, how the universe really starts to reward you almost in like impossible or completely magical ways. I mean,
Mm.
what are the chances that like you would have never expected this, right? I mean, you were
On the
more
million years.
working on, the YouTube channel Plant-Based News with Klaus, like, because it was fun and it was aligned with kind of like what you believed in. You weren't
Yeah.
expecting to turn it into an actual business. And that's something, I always recommend to people is like you don't have to figure out like your next best life. Just start like following the things that are really interesting to you and you don't even have to identify what your passion is because I think there's kind of like a little bit too much focus on like follow your passion when a lot of people are like, yo, I'm 25. I don't really know what I'm passionate about. Like, I'm still figuring that out. And in
I had a
my,
lot of that.
yeah, me too. I was like, I don't know. I like so many different things. And I think if people just keep following their interests, some of those interests could turn into passions, and some of those passions will turn into like full on entrepreneurial like endeavors that like not only really like nourish them and their identity and who they want to be in the world, but like equally and even more importantly are of great service to the
Mm.
world and the people of the world. And really, in your case, all living beings within the world. So
Amen.
beautiful story. I want to talk a little bit kind of about the evolution of plant-based news. Um, it was definitely one of the first kind of like Instagram, accounts that I started following because that's kind of like I mentioned like I don't really read the news, but like I've always used Instagram as a way to curate life empowering content. So I have like a really almost like maniacal process of like unfollowing and hiding anything negative and liking, commenting, sharing, and following anything that is like bringing about my best life. And when I first went vegan, I basically went and found all the vegan people and vegan pages that were inspiring me. Like I could see myself in them, and I followed plant-based news and then plant-based news food because I was like, oh, this is rad. There's like so many delicious like, because prior to going vegan, like I thought like vegan food was like super boring, gross, like not appetizing, didn't look good, didn't taste good. And then I started following like PBN food and I was like, "Oh my god." It's like what was I thinking? There's so much food. And then more recently I noticed I guess the creation of PBN fitness. So, as a vegan athlete and a fitness coach, I'm just curious if you can kind of like walk me through these evolutions that plant-based news have gone through and why you do them and kind of like what the kind of the goals or aspirations of those particular evolutions are.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, plant-based news, by its name, is something that is generally quite mainstream. Plant-based is something that's focused very much around food and what we eat.
Hmm.
Veganism, I think, to create clear distinction, is a lifestyle that focuses on and I should know the definition of veganism off by heart by now, but I still don't remember it. But by the definition of the vegan society, it's a lifestyle that works to exclude the use of animals in fashion, food, travel, and entertainment, and
Hmm.
try and remove the oppression and abuse of animals in the most best and possible way that is adaptable to our lives. Like to paraphrase, it's essentially it. But at the end of the day, not everyone wants to be vegan, and no matter how much we push people, and no matter how much we sort of try and encourage people to head in that direction, there are always going to be people who want to maintain some amount of animal product in their life. And so I got to thinking, how can we have conversations with people without there being that heavy sort of challenging aspect of veganism.
Mm.
And so that's where the idea came from, to create these additional pages, and we call them our content verticals or our child pages, the main page being the mother page or the mothership. And we have PBN Fitness, which is all the best vegan and plant-based athletes from around the world. And we have PBN Health, which is all the world's leading vegan doctors and wellness people. So people who have accreditations, experts in nutrition and plant-based health, dietitians, doctors, people, with the kind of years of experience in that space. And we also have PBN Earth, which we created recently, which is all about like feel good and, amazing things going on in the world, positive news stories, things that can uplift people, the beauty of our world, animals, people, planet, nature, images and video that kind of inspire and uplift people. But the idea with all these different pages, no matter what they are, what they were called, is really designed to try and bring people into the conversation, make people feel a little bit more welcome and safe. Because again, the word vegan is very heavy. It's very much associated with activism and campaigning and direct action, and it can be a little threatening to people. Some people find it a bit of a challenge. Not everyone wants to be an activist. Not everyone wants to be out there shouting, save the animals. I'm happy to do the shouting, but I try and keep it to a minimum. And I just think it's about being effective. It's about creating an effective conversation, because, I often talk about the idea that meat is murder. People say meat is murder all the time. The people say if slaughterhouses had glass walls, a lot more people would be vegetarians, right?
Yeah.
But as people who are aware of this concept and see animals as individuals, that whole phrase, meat is murder, makes sense to us. And we resonate with that, because we understand that the taking of a life of an individual that didn't need to die, could be associated with something that was similar to humans having their life taken, which is really a kind of murder. It is a murder. But this thinking, this rationale, is not something that's easy to communicate. It takes a long time for people to build that connection. We often talk about building the connection, building an awareness and an understanding of the importance and the beauty of individual animals, of their sentience, of their self-awareness, of their incredible internal worlds and their understanding of the world as well. And so unless people have that relationship with animals, it's quite hard to sell the vegan message. And so these pages were really all about talking about purely fitness, purely health, purely travel, beauty. We've got a few different pages. Food, PBN Food. PBN Food is all about food. The future of food is animal free. That's what it says on the page. Where we're going to talk about recipes. We're going to talk about ice cream and chocolate and pizza, and we're going to talk about healthy recipes as well, where you might cook without oil, or giving people a wide gamut of opportunity to learn about how amazing plant-based food can be, how rich and diverse it can be. And it's the same with fitness. Look at all these incredible men and women from across the world who are excelling in their space, in sport, in fitness, and how they are succeeding at building a life for themselves, completely free of animal products. And here's the proof that you might need to even give it a go. And so a lot of people see that content. They might try and drop whey from their diet, whey protein. They might stop using whey protein shakes that they might buy from Trader Joe's, and they might switch to dairy-free ones, plant-based ones. When those little small wins, small successes are going on, they may then stumble across plant-based news, and they may see our other page, and they may start to soak in all the information about animal agriculture and the damage it's doing to our environment. So for me, it's about trying to take people on a journey, bring them in a conversation on a topic that they feel comfortable with, and then leading them down towards more deeper, more difficult conversations, like the damage being done to our planet by our food system. And then, of course, what happens to these individuals that are in the best possible way, not the best possible way, how these individuals are actually literally being imprisoned in these destructive, cruel, and overcrowded farming systems. So I know that was a very long answer, but that's my rationale.
No, it really kind of links back to the beginning of your entrepreneurial career, or really your work career, like you worked in digital communication, in design and user experience. So with like PBN Food or PBN Fitness or PBN Earth, you're creating a user experience that is accessible to someone who may not be interested in plant-based news, or something that is like, very kind of like heavy-handed with like the vegan message. And, that's how I came into the world of the vegan lifestyle. Is I saw the documentary The Game Changers. And, prior to seeing that, and I've shared this story on the podcast before, so I won't like, belabor it, but like prior to seeing that documentary, I thought all vegan athletes were like rail thin, like ultra endurance runners. And I was like, but I want to have muscles as a vegan, or just period. Like I just like having a certain amount of muscle mass was important to me, and I did not think that was possible on a vegan diet. And then I saw the bodybuilders Nimai and Misha in that podcast, or excuse me, in that documentary. I was like, what the fuck? Okay, if they can do it, like let me give this a go. And all the athletes in that movie talk about like improved recovery times, so they could train harder, train more. And then, through my own experience, I basically had a similar experience. And then I was open to kind of like, okay, what's the impact on the environment? Like becoming a vegan, what's the impact on all living beings? And like, if you ask any child when they're a kid, like, do you love animals? Like, I don't think there is a child in this world. I mean, maybe one would like in an angry tantrum say they don't love animals, but pretty much all children love animals. There's just like a natural affinity for us to, just love animals. And so for me, like, then of course I went down the rabbit hole of like the health implications, realizing that like dairy contributes significantly to, all types of cancer. And, both my parents, my mom had cancer and my dad has prostate cancer. Then I learned, probably actually from World Plant Milk Day and, plant-based news, that like if you consume like, 4 or more servings of dairy in a day, your chances of cancer like go up by X%. And I was
Yes.
like, what? Like, okay, like this is the reason I'm staying, vegan, plant-based for the rest of my life, is because like I can't wait till I'm like 70, and have cancer to go like vegan. Like I have
Mhm.
to start now in order to avoid that. Plus, by going vegan, my impact on the environment, on the animals, like is radically improved, in a positive direction. So I love that you're actually creating access points through PBN news for people to come in to, like you said, join the conversation in a way that like doesn't scare them off, that feels accessible, that feels like interesting, or maybe align with something, like maybe someone's super into fitness or someone's super into food and cooking. And they're like, oh, wow, I can like make a vegan version of this. Like, oh, that's cool. Like some of my family members are vegan. Maybe I could like surprise them with this. So tell us a little bit more about World Plant Milk Day. Because I think that is, as a kid, I literally drank probably half a gallon to a gallon of milk a day. Like,
Right. So did I, because we're told milk does a body good, doesn't it?
yeah,
You
yep. And
need
I
milk.
wanted to be strong. I wanted
You need,
muscles.
yeah, and as Dr. Milton Mills will say, that's not science, that's marketing.
Yeah.
And milk doesn't do a body good, and the reality is that we don't need milk, we need calcium, and we can get calcium from things like tahini, sesame
Mm,
seeds in large quantities, and it is bioavailable, despite what some of the carnivores will tell you. We can consume plant sources of calcium, and live a healthy, have a healthy life, and have a healthy, have a healthy skeleton, healthy
yeah.
bones. But I guess the beginning of World Plant Milk Day was really when I had first heard that there was a there was a World Milk Day, and the
Mm,
dairy industry across the world was celebrating milk, and they were out there on Twitter talking about it, and there were farmers chugging large glasses of milk, going, "It's World Milk Day, hurrah!" And
mm,
I thought to myself, "Oh, this is awful. We need to have a World Plant Milk Day." And a friend of mine who I worked with alongside one of our partner sister organizations, ProVeg, said to me, he said, why don't you choose a different day of the year rather than picking that day? Because if you pick that day, then it'll kind of feel like you're competing with that
Mm.
event. Why not create your own special day? And we chose August 22nd and I built a website that night and started talking about it and promoting it. And yeah, it just took off. Created the hashtag World Plant Milk Day, and suddenly everyone was talking about it. And fast forward 4 years, maybe I think 4 or 5 years. Again, I lost track. My concept of time since the pandemic has been so skewed. But fast forward, and it's an international event. It's listed in various international event platforms where you get all those, like Turkey Day and Banana Day and World Plant Milk Day. And we've got a website where there's a challenge where you can go on the website right now, worldplantmilkday.com, and you can start a 1 week challenge to go dairy free. And you can start any time of the year, and you get emails every day for 7 days with some ideas and suggestions on how you can be dairy free, as well as like knowledge about why dairy is not so good for you. And it doesn't push the vegan lifestyle; it pushes the dairy-free lifestyle for 7 days. And
Mm.
it's about getting people just a little interested in trying dairy-free and seeing how different they might feel. People's digestion improves, people's skin improves, people's sleep improves, people's sinuses improve. They feel lighter, they feel clearer, they can concentrate more. And it's amazing how quickly your body adapts, right? And so World Plant Milk Day has become an international thing. I'm the founder of it, but I consider it a community event. It's something that anyone anywhere in the world can celebrate every August, but it's something that we want to keep pushing all year long, for the environmental, the health, and the animal rights, animal welfare reasons. And so it continues today. And I hope, well, we're in November now. We've just had World Plant Milk Day, but every year it gets more and more people involved and more people talking about it. And I'm very proud to have been a part of it.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. This show is brought to you by Feel Free from Botanic Tonics. This product is unlike anything I've ever had before. No joke. It's made with kava root and other ancient plants, and just half a shot gives me this incredible sense of focused flow and productivity. And I love to take just half a shot right before I work out. I take it with my pre-workout, and it takes my workouts to the next level. It is seriously unlike anything I've ever had. It's also an incredible productivity tool for any big work projects that you have, or long periods of time where you just need to be super focused in flow state and get a lot of shit done. So if you want to give this a shot, you can go to botanictonics.com and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 40% off your first order. No joke, 40% off with code DRAGON. That's Feel Free from botanictonics.com, code DRAGON. Feel free, feel good. Yeah, it's really fascinating to me from a couple different angles. One, like, you consistently use your digital media skill set to, advance ideas and movements. So, like, for me, one of the most memorable things about World Plant Milk Day was the Instagram filter, where you could click it and it would it'd do like a random selection, and it would say like your plant milk is like XYZ. And the one I got was like amaranth and something else, and like some word I'd never even heard of. And I was like, and then it made me go like look up what the heck that was. And it like got me more interested, like, oh, there's more than just like almond milk and coconut milk. There's all
Yeah.
these other like interesting milks. And I just think it's so cool that you're consistently like leveraging the skill set that you built at the beginning of your working career to, really advance the things that you are deeply passionate about. And a follow-up question that I kind of have for you, because like it's kind of crazy, like in one sense, like who gave you permission to create like a international day based on plant milk? Like, how did you even like I feel like most people be like, "Oh, I'm not worthy," or I could never do that." Like, like walk me through the mental construct of that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good question. Like, how did I decide that I was going to do that? I mean, I knew that there were these international days, and I looked to see if there was an international World Plant Milk Day, and there
hmm
wasn't one. And I thought, well, I'm just going to create one. I'm just going to pick a day and create a website, worldplantmilkday.com, and talk about it on social media, create a hashtag. For
hmm
me, I think, this stuff comes naturally to me as a marketeer, as a communicator,
mm,
because I understand the power of social media and also understand the power of advertising and conversation. And I think ultimately media is about starting conversations. And if you can get enough people interested, you can build momentum. It's about building a groundswell of support for something.
hmm
Obviously, World Plant Milk Day doesn't have anywhere near as much support as World Milk Day does.
yeah,
But if I had the right backing and I had the right financial support, which I will continue to work on for something like World Plant Milk Day, my plan would be to have a whole team of people working on it. And it's a yearly campaign that is huge in August, but it's all year round campaigning and working to remove the use of dairy from our entire food system,
yeah,
and build like a campaign against dairy. But there are only so many hours in a day, and I'm only one person,
yeah,
and so I have to prioritize. And so my focus is obviously building PBN, making it a sustainable, financially viable platform. And but
yeah.
then I'm hoping that once that is in a good place, I'll be able to step back a little bit and focus more on campaigning, which is
Mm.
you know social campaigning on these issues like dairy, and dairy and other things that I care about.
Yeah, I mean, at least in my opinion, you're 4 or 5 years into the endeavor just with, World Plant Milk Day, like, the dairy industry has been doing this for, decades, like hundreds of years, like
Centuries.
even. And so like of course they're going to have a higher proliferation than, your message. But like now I'm like you're making me think about like just remember like all the milk mustaches and stuff like how they're just such good marketers but like so are you and so are so many people in the vegan community and there's like as I think as the marketing and the brilliance behind making the vegan lifestyle like fun, approachable and exciting, like that's the right way to attract people versus like trying to like shame them into it. It's like I do think awareness is critical because like one of the things I always say to like people if they really want to get into the discussion is like what's the difference between like like killing a cow for meat and like killing your pet dog. Like it's literally the same thing. It's just like, and in some cultures they do kill dogs and eat them.
Yeah.
But like if you were asked to someone who had a dog, they'd be like, "Oh, that's not right." And it's always like crazy to me, when people are like, "Ah, but it's a cow, it's different," but it's really not different. So, um, I think this kind of leads me to like again, like I try to steer away from those more kind of like difficult conversations because I don't want to get into arguments that are like forcing people to like think really hard about murder. I'd rather focus on like more positive things like World Plant Milk Day and PBN Fitness and like the things that I'm like hell yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this movement. Which brings me to like the whole like how the heck did you start like who gave you permission to start positive news like again like you just keep starting these things that are really awesome but like tell me more about the idea behind positive news and kind of like what the current evolution of it is.
Yeah, so Positive News, just for correction, wasn't actually started by me, but it was
Ah,
been around for a very long time. It was a magazine and a newspaper that started, I think, some sort of like 25 years ago,
oh wow.
and it was founded by Shauna Crockett Burroughs in 1993, so quite a long
Mm,
time ago. And it was going through a lot of challenges and struggle, and it wasn't really getting to enough people. And it was a quarterly paper that went out to people who subscribed to it. And then an amazing young man called Sean Dagan Wood, who's a good friend of mine, he became the editor and took on sort of trying to shift it away from it being like a newspaper and turning it into a magazine. Before I was involved with PBN, was involved with Sean and was helping support the platform in various ways that I could. But also, they launched a crowdfunder, which was incredibly successful. I bought a share of the organization, and so
Mm.
I'm kind of technically a co-owner of the organization. But I support it from the sidelines. I talk about it. Campaign for it and encourage people to read it. And the foundation of positive news is what's called constructive journalism, which is
Mm.
all about how you build a story around what happens in the world. So journalism tends to be the who, why, what, and the when. But constructive journalism is also about the what next. How do we go from disaster to solution?
Mm.
And I think it's very easy for media, traditional media, mainstream media, to always talk about all the terrible things that are going on in the world, and there isn't enough conversation about what's going right, about
Mm.
what people are doing to turn back the sort of the catastrophic climate crisis or any kind of terrible thing. And you mentioned obviously that there's a lot of bad stuff in the media and there's a lot of bad news, and bad news sells. It spreads rapidly. People like to spread bad news and they like to spread negativity because people can easily feed off it. But on the other side, people also love good news.
Mm.
People love to hear positive stories. One of my very good friends, Sam Bentley, is very popular on Instagram, and he creates very short form positive news content. And if anyone who's listening and is on Instagram, please check out Sam Bentley. His stories and his short videos are very uplifting, empowering, and just it's so good to hear the good news. But that's the foundation of positive news. It's a quarterly magazine, a beautiful magazine that you get in the post, and you can subscribe from anywhere in the world. And you'll get all of these wonderful stories, real stories of real people on the ground around the world who are doing good things to turn to kind of protect our planet, protect the oceans and the rivers and the forests. People doing good things in business and really trying to make the world a better place. So if you can if you can spare the support, please do check out positive.news and you'll find out all about how the magazine works.
Yeah. And that's, kind of perception is reality, right? And this is why I don't watch the news, is because like most of the news is driven by, bad news and the fear cycle, because like you said, it sells. And so for me, like I'm a super happy, positive person. Like, I want to focus, and that's why I'm constantly training my Instagram AI to like only feed me inspiring, empowering stuff, is because I want my reality, my perception to draw forth the life that I want to live, right? And I see a lot of people, they're just like, oh, the world's going to shit and da 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 da. I'm like, really? Like there's so many incredible things going on. There's so much like positive change happening and like really good things. And it's just like you are what you consume. So if you consume media that is like literally like the world's going to shit, of course, your world is literally going to shit because that's what you're consuming. But if you consume the more positive stuff, like Sam Bentley's, Instagram feed and positive news, website and magazine, as well as like plant-based news, you're like, oh man, the world's really going in a really positive direction. So I just want to encourage like every listener to really like think about curating, all forms of consumption, whether that's food,
Definitely.
information, experiences, especially news.
Yeah,
um,
definitely. There's a lot of hope out there, and we need to break, as it says on the Positive News website, we need to break the bad habit of
mm,
bad news. It's very addictive to talk about and think about all the bad things that are going on in our world, and I find myself slipping into it sometimes as well.
yeah,
But it's important to spend some time feeding our minds, as you say, with positive media, and there's a lot of positive media out there,
yeah,
especially on Instagram. There's a lot of creators creating content that's trying to uplift people because yes, of course there's bad things going on in the world and of course there's a lot of suffering, and it doesn't mean that we are ignoring it. We
yeah.
know it's there, but I think we're sensitive emotional beings, and I think that some of us have to protect ourselves from all that negativity and all that. I'm not a massive fan of using the word negativity because I think negative things imply that it's something that you don't want to know about. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm,
poverty is negative, and the climate crisis is negative. You could be deemed as negative,
mhm.
but sometimes I think there's this idea. I don't want to hear about anything negative, which means I don't know about anything that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
I think that we want to flip that. We want people to say, or come to the point where we're like, look, I realize there's a lot of suffering, but I know that where I can operate is in a space of nourishment and support where we can uplift people, empower people, because
Hmm.
goodness knows we need it, right? We're in
Yeah.
a space now where we are living on borrowed time, and we need as many people to come together to inspire and motivate as many people as possible to create real change, because we need it. We need it. We really, really need it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the plant-based treaty, because I think this is kind of a natural progression into like your work there, and like, what is it, and what is the driving, factors behind it? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish with
So
plant-based treaty?
according to the website, it's the adaptation. So the adaptation of the plant-based treaty as a companion to the UNFCCC Paris Agreement will put food systems at the heart of combining the climate crisis. So it's really about trying to educate and inspire people along the idea that if we change our food system, we will change everything,
Mm,
and that we need to get widespread adoption of a plant-based food system away from animal food systems, because they are so destructive. Animal-based food systems are so destructive and so damaging to our world in so many ways. The rivers, the oceans, the forests, the sky, the air, it's so terrible on what it does. And if we can try and bring people along the conversation, get them to endorse the plant-based treaty, whether they're an individual, an organization, a town council, a city. So many cities around the world are endorsing the plant-based treaty. You know, there's just countless organizations. The Los Angeles City Council has unanimously endorsed the plant-based treaty in response to the climate emergency. That's huge.
that's
We can get,
massive.
yeah, exactly, and getting more and more people on board, because it's about getting this information to people in a way that they can relate to. It's about what we're eating. It's about how we're growing and farming. And as George Monbiot, who's this amazing environmentalist, says, we have got to move away from this conversation that farmers are the enemy. Farmers are not the enemy. We need
Mm,
farmers. The problem is that what farmers have been caught up in for the last century is a form of farming that is parasitic in nature. It is causing widespread environmental collapse, and we have got to convince people that we need to make the shift.
mm,
Farmers don't need to stop farming. They just need to change the way they farm. And of
yeah.
course, that's not a simple, I'll be very clear, obviously, that's not a simple process. Farmers need support. They need funding. They need guidance. They need knowledge to make changes away from, centuries old family models of farming. But, I think people talk about how I only shop from or I only buy from a family farm. I only buy from a small provider, but 90+% of meat and animal products that are consumed in the United States come from factory farms.
Yeah.
And some of those factory farms are owned by families. So just because something is, owned by a family, it doesn't mean that they're doing good for the planet. So plant-based treaty is all about trying to inspire and educate and give people the tools they need to campaign for change and inspire a whole generation of people to move away from animal agriculture completely. So relinquish no land usage, ecosystems, degradation, or forestation for animal agriculture, redirect an active transition away from animal-based foods systems, so towards a plant-based food system, and to actively restore key ecosystems,
Mm,
particularly forests and rewild landscapes. So it's a three-step approach, and it's very sort of scientific. There's over 61,000 people who've endorsed it so far, 946 organizations, 956 businesses, and over 20 cities and states have endorsed the treaty. So it's gaining momentum. PBN is an official partner, official media partner. We're here pushing it,
mhm.
supporting it, backing it, trying to get as many people involved and getting behind it, because, in my opinion, it is the future of our species and our whole way of living.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Fit Rich Vegan. If you're ready to get in the best shape of your life, double your income, and 10x your savings and investments, then this is the coaching program for you. But wait a minute, Dragon. Isn't this your coaching program? Heck yeah, it is. I spent the last 8 years mastering my fitness and my finances, and I've built an incredible coaching program with an incredible team to help you get the body of your dreams and finally achieve that level of financial success that you've been seeking. So if you want to find out if you're a good fit for the program, go to fitrichvegan.com and book your free consultation today. Or you can just DM me on Instagram with the words Fit Rich Vegan, and we can chat about if it's going to be a good fit for you. I'm committed to empowering people to actually achieve their fitness and financial goals. I spent the last 20 years trying to figure this out on my own. And what I realized is the key to doing it is not doing it alone. You have to have coaches, you have to have mentors, and you have to be a part of masterminds. And that's exactly what Fit Rich Vegan has. It has coaches, mentors, and it is a mastermind. So again, if you're ready to book your free consultation today, go to fitrichvegan.com or drop me a DM on Instagram.
Absolutely agree. And what got us here is not going to get us there. Like change, in order for us to move forward as a species, like we have to evolve, and we have throughout the millennia. We have completely evolved in so many different ways. So like, why would we stop evolving now? Right.
Yeah.
Especially now, like when we have the science and the understanding to see the impact that we are having with particular forms of business, commerce, and food production, right? And when you're talking about the food stuff, it's like these farmers are being subsidized to produce certain types of food, and they're going to continue to produce those types of food until the subsidies either stop or new subsidies are created that encourage them to move in the direction that is going to, essentially save our planet and save all the different, equally important living beings. So I think this naturally kind of progresses into, something maybe even a little bit deeper, and that's spirituality. Something that you and I, before we hit record, decide that we may want to delve into. So I'm just kind of curious, like how your spiritual journey has really, played a factor in life and business for you.
It's a really good question. So I grew up in a very small town, as I said, in Africa, and kind of pervading spiritual belief system was Christian, Presbyterian Christian, which I guess is like a Protestant kind of part of Christianity. And religion in that part of the world was always, a given. You had to and should be practicing a religion of some sort. And I never really understood it at all. We'd have religious instruction classes at school, and they'd talk about God and Jesus and the Bible, and none of it really made any sense to me. I guess because I always felt very different from a young age. But I would always be the one in the class going, "But why, miss? But why? I don't understand. But why?" And often there she'd be like, "Just stop asking questions and sit down and shut up." None of it made any sense to me. And but I was very lucky because my mother and my grandmother are very spiritual people, and spirituality is a term that's thrown around a lot by a lot of people. But what does that actually mean? And to me, it was just an understanding and awareness that I, as an individual, are a part of something much greater. And whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. We're a part of a universe, all of us. And at a very young age, I was exposed to the likes of Carl Sagan, who said famously, "We are the universe made self-aware." Well, we are the universe becoming aware of itself. As each of us look through our own eyes at the world around us, we are made of star stuff, he also said. We're made from the things that the stars are made from, and that our bodies and our minds and every essence of us is of the universe, and that we are, as individuals and creatures, becoming and emerging into this universe and becoming more self-aware and more sort of conscious of who we are. And I learned and was aware of that all from a very, very young age, and felt very connected and deeply close to these ideas that I'm just a tiny little speck floating on another speck in the cosmos of what appears to be nothingness. And I would lie on the grass as a child. I was very fortunate to be able to not live near a city and see the majesty and beauty of the Milky Way as it sort of sprawled across the African sky with trillions of stars, like an explosion of stars in the sky, something I miss deeply because you cannot see that in the Western world. With the light pollution, you cannot see the beauty of the night sky, which is one of the greatest tragedies, I think, of modern life. But that filled me with wonder and questioning of like who I am and what I am and why am I here and what is Earth and what is this planet and what's the meaning of life? And I was questioning these things from a very young age. But when I kind of came to the UK and ended up being drowned in the best possible way in city life, I lost a real connection to that. And I began to become very lost and confused and got caught up in the usual things that happen to you when you end up in a city, drinking and drugs and partying and not really having any directional focus, and felt very unsure about who I was and what I was doing or what was the whole point of everything. And I actually was introduced to a form of Buddhism called Nichiren Buddhism, and was founded by the 13th century Buddhist priest Nichiren Daishonin. And he was a young man, the son of a fisherman, who discovered, he found himself in a part of the world, Japan, where the feudal Japanese religion, Shintoism, was being enforced onto people. And he questioned how and why, if this religion was really helping people, why was there so much suffering? Famine, animals dead in the street, so much sort of negativity, what's the word? So much kind of like pain and suffering in the street and the world around him. And he began to study all the teachings of the Buddha, because Buddhism was one of the major religions in his country. And this sort of, a bit of a backstory of who this person was. He was an activist. He was a political activist. He was in the 13th century standing up and saying men and women are equal, that even this feudal Japanese system where men held all the power, he was saying and demanding and calling for equality. He was also vegetarian. He didn't eat meat, despite the fact that his father was a fisherman. This is in the 13th century. And all this knowledge that I acquired from studying his life and learning, because I began to learn about Buddhism and his form of Buddhism that he created, which was the chanting of the mantra Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Have you heard of that? So Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is the title of the Lotus Sutra, and it very simply means devotion to the one. Nam means devotion, Myoho means the wonderful law, Renge is cause and effect, and Kyo is sound or teaching. So it's essentially devotion to the wonderful law of cause and effect through the voice, through the sound, through the teaching. And we chant, as Nichiren Buddhists, we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's our mantra. And the mantra is really the sort of foundation of my spiritual practice, which is really about learning to call from within us that deep compassion, courage, and wisdom that is innate within all human beings, that we all are imbued with it in infinite quantities, but it has to be called forth, it has to be watered, it has to be nourished. If we don't have compassion watered within us, it kind of disappears or dies or kind of retreats to the point where people feel deeply unhappy. And so when I first discovered this practice, I was lost and confused and didn't know where I was going. And it really centered me and really aligned me and gave me a huge and incredible amount of focus. It taught me to master my mind. Nichiren taught in the 13th century that if you want to master your life, you must master your mind. You cannot let your mind be the controller, your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, because we are not our thoughts and our feelings, but they often control us. They take over us. They pull us and push us in all different directions. And so the practice of chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is designed to really give you that focus, so that twice a day, you sit down twice a day in front of a mandala where we chant to, which is like a place to pray, chant, and to call forth that Buddha nature, where you call forth the infinite wellspring of courage, compassion, and wisdom to guide you on the path of your choice, right? To really focus on the things that you want. Now, I did this for, how many years? 12 years? Practiced it for 12 years, I think. No, less than 12 years. It was, 12 years, because as long as I've been with my partner. Again, my concept of time is very skewed thanks to the pandemic. But I practiced it for a very, very long time, well over a decade, and it really changed who I was as a person, gave me so much courage and conviction and confidence in myself as a person. I really was really confused about who I was before, what I should be doing, where I should be going. And that's been the foundation of my life spiritually ever since, because it made me realize that if I want to make changes, I have to take responsibility. Obviously, we all are afforded various levels of privilege in this world and this life, and that does give us a head start, and it's important to acknowledge that. But I think that when we put our hands together, when we chant as Nichiren Buddhists, it's about taking our life into our own hands and calling for the courage and wisdom to make the changes that we need to make to live a better life, to be happier, to be healthier, to be have a better job. Because our thoughts lead to our words lead to our actions lead to the changes that we need. And it's about bringing that constant flow and reminder. And it's not like something that you're not going to just chant or pray and something's going to magically happen. It's those daily changes every single day, pushing yourself in the right direction. And you can attest to that with exercise and fitness. You don't go to the gym and then suddenly you have muscles. It's a very slow and painful process, and it requires commitment and just showing up day after day after day, right? And so my spiritual practice is and has always been about that. It's about showing up and sitting down every day and chanting. And I did that for well over a decade. Since I've started this business and created this organization with Klaus, I have stepped away from that organization. It's called the Soka Gakkai. You'll find them in the United States and you'll find them in the UK. I stepped away from the organized part of this religion or this spiritual belief system, because a lot of the people within the organization I came at odds with because of veganism. And a lot of people in the organization didn't see eye to eye with me about veganism. A good 7-8 years ago, I was challenging people in the organization that as a person and a Buddhist who's going out there talking about compassion, ahimsa, and nonviolence, why are we eating animals?
Yeah.
And I was challenging that, and people didn't like that. And of course, within this Buddhist organization, a lot of people eat meat, and a lot of people continue to eat meat. And I didn't like that. And I didn't want to be a part of an organization that wouldn't even talk about it. It's fine to disagree, but in my opinion, it's such an important subject that, it has to be part of a spiritual conversation. We cannot be spiritual, compassionate people and be at the same time killing animals just for fun because we like the taste of their bodies. We don't need to eat animals. So if you want to align your beliefs with your actions, then that's where veganism lives, right? For me. And so my spiritual journey came through learning about Nichiren Buddhism and his activism and the culture of Japan and, this whole feudalistic society, which was very much about the nail that stands up must be hammered down and about everyone must be the same and you must fall in line. And I'm not that person at all. And so Nichiren's spirit, you could say, I try to embody and live through his veracity and his passion. And there's a lot more to the story. He's a very, very interesting person. I highly recommend looking him up, learning about him, reading some of the letters and the stuff that was written about him that he wrote to his disciples over the many years that he was actually, exiled. He was exiled to a place called Sado Island, which was in the North Sea, I think North or South Sea of Japan, where the Japanese government placed him because they tried to execute him some 3 times and they failed. And so they decided to exile him, and where he sat there for the rest of his days, writing these beautiful letters to all the disciples on all different subjects, from, trouble in marriage to depression to, all kinds of different interesting things. So yeah, that's kind of my spirituality or my spiritual life in a nutshell.
It's truly beautiful how essentially you started this, daily, twice a day practice of chanting, and calling in compassion, courage, and wisdom. And then, within 4 years of starting that, you then basically, the universe delivered to you this plant-based news endeavor, which is, further empowered you to truly, live a life of compassion, courage, and wisdom. I mean, that is literally what you are sharing through PBN in all its, various forms. It is, more compassion and, lending courage to others and providing wisdom, through positive media. So I'm really glad we covered the spirituality because now I see how it plays so much into who you have become in this world and like why you do what you do. And I also find it really fascinating and unfortunate, but kind of expected that even within the kind of organized, religion of, what got you started, kind of ultimately you realize like, wait a minute, like this is good, but there's some things that are still out of integrity, even within this like beautiful practice. And unfortunately, I think, not just religion, but any organization, ultimately, like whoever ends up being the leader of it, their, values or ideas or lack of values or, lack of compassion ends up kind of like molding that organization. And so, I think it's incredibly important for all people and organizations to get truly clear on what their values are and how their actions and their organization that they are a part of or leading is aligned or potentially out of integrity. And then like if it is out of integrity, what is the change that can be made? Or maybe it's time to move on or even create an organization that is aligned, which is what you have done. So
Absolutely.
Truly beautiful. Well, I know we're getting pretty long in the tooth here and I've gone over a bit. Are there any kind of like last words of wisdom or requests of the audience or any last thoughts that you would like to share before we wrap this up?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Justin. I think my only kind of final words of wisdom are that if you're thinking about starting something
Mm.
that would make the world a better place in any way, whatever that is, just start. Don't try and over-engineer it. Don't try and think about anything too far into the future. Just start today. Think about how you can get things going, even writing a plan, talking to a friend about it, running the idea past your someone at work who you work with, maybe just talking to people about your idea and start to talk about it more. Get it out of your head, get it on paper, really start to, and I really don't like necessarily using the word manifest because it's associated with all kinds of stuff I find a little too woo-woo for me. But like, if you want to manifest something, you want to bring it into reality, you have to get it out of your thoughts and bring thoughts into form. Consciousness, in my opinion, brings life to form, physical form. And the only way to do that is to talk about it, write it down, coalesce it into something and sort of roll those ideas around in your head and spend a little time each week on it. If you're busy and you've got a family or you're busy and you've got a business, give yourself, half an hour on the weekend, just half an hour, or even just 20 minutes. Give yourself a little time, ring fence some time in your week. Oops, I thought I'd lost you. Ring fence a little time each week to do this and to talk about it and to discuss it and to sketch it out or to, to start coming up with some MVPs, which is the minimum viable product, whatever that might be. Just give yourself permission to start.
I love that. Robbie, if people want to connect with you online, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at Robbie, ROBBIE _ Lockie, LOCKIE. And you can obviously follow PBN on all the social medias at / plant-based news. And if you want to contact me by email, you can send me an email at hi@plantbasednews.org.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for coming on the show, brother.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, literally everything can be used as an opportunity to learn, to heal, to grow, and to transform. So whatever is going on in your life, choose to consciously and proactively harness that energy and use it to alchemize your life to the next level. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or on your favorite social media and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. As always, you can find me at Justin David Carl on Instagram and all the socials, as well as at alchemizelife.com on the web. Until the next time, sending you lots of energy and plenty of dragon magic.